Hey guys, Xlice here. Fate Collab Round 2 is finally here, which means Rin Tohsaka and Gilgamesh are now available to play in HSR. If you're a fan of the Twin Tails, enjoy the Archer skill nuke team, or just want to play around with the new collab characters, Rin might just be for you. In this complete and detailed guide, I'll explain everything you need to know about Rin Tohsaka. We'll start with what she does in combat, and I'll summarize everything useful in her kit, then go through her best builds, weapons, and relics, her Eidolons, best teammates, run through a proper gameplay showcase, and give you a final review on if you should pull her. Disclaimer on screen, this is Creator Server, and with that out of the way, let's get into it. So, Rin is a quantum erudition character who converts SP spent or recovered into her unique mechanic called Gem Energy to deal massive skill damage. This is highly familiar to how Archer works, and unsurprisingly, they team together pretty well in an F2P friendly team comp. Rin, Archer, Sparkle, Huohuo. Let's go over what she does in combat. Immediately upon entering the battlefield, the only thing you need to pay attention to is her tooltip number. This is her unique mechanic called Gem Energy, and it increases in the following ways. By default, it starts combat with 20. Her technique grants her 10 on entering combat. Her ult grants 12, and then every time an ally recovers or consumes one skill point, Rin will gain 1 Gem Energy. So on combat start, she'll start with 33. 20 by default, 10 from technique, and 3 more from Sparkle's technique, which recovers 3 SP at the start of combat. This Gem Energy is responsible for big skill damage when it's her turn. If she has at least 15 energy or 7 skill points, on her turn she can use Enhanced Skill. Using it will consume both her Gem Energy and any skill points you have above 2 to deal massive bounce damage. Gem Energy is consumed 3 at a time, and SP is first converted to Gem Energy at a 1:2 ratio here. So, if you have 7 SP, 5 of it gets consumed to give her 10 Gem Energy. And then if she has 65 Gem Energy as an example, she'll consume 63 to deal 21 instances of bounce damage and leave 2 energy for later. In a team with Archer, she will most often use her enhanced skill from the Gem Energy that she stacks up. If she's a hyper carry unit without Archer on the team, then she'll be consuming the skill points to convert pretty often. Her skill will be her main source of damage, but she also has 2 more. If she's in a team with Archer, when Archer uses his skill with either 3 or less SP, or 5 uses of a skill in a row, Rin and Archer will fire a joint follow-up attack to all enemies and recovers 4 skill points. This is a pretty nice quality of life to the Archer team, since it will activate in the middle of Archer using a skill, grant him extra SP right there, and then allow him to chain 3 to 4 skill uses in a row, even if he starts with low SP. Now, this joint follow-up attack only happens once per Rin's turn, so she does need a little bit of speed to get her action count higher so that these follow attacks can happen more often during Archer's turns. Her ultimate is a simple AoE attack that recovers 1 skill point and applies a 20% vulnerability to all enemies for 3 turns. The main use of this will be for that debuff. It does have a 160 energy cost, but uptime is pretty solid with joint follow-up attacks and her own skill. So overall, Rin's playstyle is pretty straightforward. She's going to ult to maintain a vuln debuff on all enemies, and then enhance skill to deal nice bounce damage. Let's finalize some things and then get to her builds. When she's on field, SP limit increases by 2, and in combat she gains 150% attack and 15% quantum res pen. If Archer's on the same team, he also gains these exact bonuses. Whenever an ally consumes or recovers SP, they gain 70% increased crit damage. So pairing these two together gets you some pretty huge juicy stat buffs for both characters. She also gets 20% speed for 3 turns on entering combat, or after using Enhanced Skill. Since she does use Enhanced Skill pretty often, this effectively is a permanent 20% speed buff. Her base speed is 102, so this puts her at 122 speed without any stat bonuses. Trace Nodes will give her 18 attack, 37.3 crit damage, and 8 damage bonus. Leveling priority on screen. Her skill will be all her damage, ult has the vuln debuff value, and talent has the increased crit damage. Alright, now let's take a look at her light cones. Her signature provides 18% crit rate, 72% skill damage, and all allies ignore 20% defense. The passive requirements here for doing 4 or more skill points in a single turn is pretty easy to enable for her, so these are 100% uptime buffs. The most valuable thing here is the 20% ignore defense for all allies, which is quite juicy on a light cone, especially for quantum characters who focus on reaching 100% in combat. Otherwise, erudition light cones have a decent number of options, so pull for a signature if you value the ignore defense. The Herta Sig is pretty nice, 12% crit rate, 60% skill and ultimate damage, and 1 SP on ultimate usage, if above 140 cost, which she is. Jingyuan's light cone is okay, but quite outscaled now. The follow-up attack is kinda nice, specifically for the Archer dual team, so you can use it if you want to do that team. Otherwise, the following are okay to use. Eternal Calculus and Himiko's standard light cone against high enemy counts are pretty nice. And then Peaceful Day for a universal 32 to 64% damage bonus, depending on copies. She does have 160 energy, so this is quite nice for her. For my personal recommendations, if you aren't able to grab her signature, I would stick to the Herta signature, Jingyuan signature if you pair with Archer, or Peaceful Day 4-star. Now running through relics, so our best in slot will be our trusty 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars. Really can't beat the 4-piece bonus here that grants a total of 20% ignore defense, especially when we're trying to stack to 100%. Alternatively, 4-piece Scholar grants 8% crit rate and 20 to 45% skill damage bonus. For planar ornaments, her best in slot will be 2-piece Tengoku for easy access 48% crit damage. A slightly weaker alternative will be 2-piece Rudolin Arena for 8% crit rate and 20% skill damage. Now these two will be her best DPS options, but she can also go a bit more supportive. 2-piece Tohsaka for 12% attack buff for the first ally, 2-piece Penacony for 10% damage buff for same type allies, or 2-piece Von Whack for action advance. All of these three are solid 5% energy regen options. Now if your Archer is a Giga Beast, then this 2-piece supportive set will provide a greater team DPS than the 2-piece offensive ones. For main stats, we are going a pretty standard DPS build. Crit body, speed over attack boots, damage over attack orb, and attack or ER rope. Important thing to remember for her build is she does gain 150% attack for free from her trace passive, which makes attack main stat here have heavy diminishing returns. For the body, always crit, reach 100% crit rate in combat. If you're running Sparkle, then crit damage body is possible if you manage 90% crit rate on the stat page. Speed boots on the Archer team for more turns for joint follow-up attacks, and then speed or attack boots if on hyper carry and she gets action advance or is speed tuned. For orb, damage is generally better just due to the free attack that she gets naturally. And then for the rope, attack or ER depends on how you play her. Her ult isn't a crazy amount of damage, it's just uptime on her 3-turn Vuln debuff. So if you need energy regen rope to maintain that, go for it. In general, these are all baseline recommendations. Optimal builds will depend heavily on light cone choice, team comp, and difficulty of content. When you got a full build, this is what you can approximately expect. 127 speed, this is base plus speed boots, plus an extra 20% gets her 147 in combat. Crit rate, 100% in combat, 90% here if you have Sparkle signature, crit damage as high as possible, attack as needed, and energy regen as needed. High-end builds with 4 to 5 substat rolls on each piece can probably achieve the following: as much attack as possible, 90 crit rate, and 250 plus crit damage. Now let's run through her Eidolons. E1. This one basically gives the Synergies effect to her skill for the next turn. Every usage of her enhanced skill that consumes 30 plus gem energy gets converted into what's called a shadow gem. This is the shadow version. The next turn, the shadow version can be used and does not use any gem energy. So basically, this allows her gem energy to stack for 2 turns instead of 1, but she still gets to nuke every single turn basically. And then E2 is going to be big, juicy damage multipliers. 1.3 times final for all allies, and 1.3 more for herself. I'm fairly certain that the total here is 1.6 for Rin, even though the wording here implies just generic damage bonus. Otherwise, it would be kind of weak. Could be wrong, but otherwise, it's still pretty good just for the 1.3 times here. And then this combined with her E1 should be pretty juicy for DPS. E4, she gains 140% crit damage instead of 70% crit damage at max stacks from her talent. E6, 20% res pen, and her ultimate grants 24 gem energy and 1 extra turn. The 1 extra turn can go pretty crazy insane with E1 and Synergies, allowing potentially 3 massive skill nukes to occur back to back to back. Overall, her Eidolons basically stabilize her into a more solid main DPS. Her at E0 is mostly a sub DPS with Archer, but from E1 forward, she can handle her own pretty well. And of course, E6 should allow for some clip-worthy nukes, and I'll try to showcase that on my second channel, so don't forget to follow me over there. Alright, now for teams and showcases. So Rin basically has 2 setups that synergize really well with her kit. Either we join forces with Archer, or we set up a hypercarry comp with Synergies to copy those juicy skill nukes. Sparkle will be glued to this team permanently, and for your sustain, you can run either Hoho or DHPT. Hoho will be preferred for ult energy funneling since everyone on this team values ult uptime. Now at E0, Rin performs most consistently on this Archer dual team. At E1+, she starts becoming a much stronger menace combined with Synergies for some crazy all-in nukes. This is how I would recommend you guys build your comps, but you can still run E0 Rin on the hypercarry setup. You just have to accept that there's very few damage windows for her since she has to line up Synergies copy with a large amount of SP or high gem energy count together. Now, for this hypercarry comp, Synergies is difficult to replace. If you don't have her, your remaining options are Tribi or Robin for that slot. So, first let's take a look at the Archer Rin dual DPS comp. We've got Archer Rin and then Sparkle Huohuo, and this will be the most F2P friendly roster you can build. Against MOC Starward mode, this team is able to perform a clean one cycle clear, and here are the most important findings from my testing. Sparkle focuses on action advancing Archer. Rin is run at decent speed level for more turns, which means more joint follow-up attacks. The combination of Sparkle ult plus the joint follow-up attack does pretty well to mitigate SP problems, and they typically alternate on their usage to consistently upkeep for the team. Huohuo aims to just have decent ult uptime, and can either basic or skill on her turn depending on how her energy looks. The combo of Rin and Archer deals an impressive amount of damage thanks to the massive 150% attack boost and quantum respen that both of them get, and it's very noticeable right from the start. Rin's ultimate isn't responsible for that much damage, so we can generally hold it for when we need the vulnerability debuff the most. This is most valuable for either new waves of enemies, and of course its 3-turn duration. Overall, I find that this team performs quite well, with low amount of micromanagement needed. Alright, now let's move to the hypercarry setup. So we've got Rin, Sparkle, Synergies, and Huohuo. We basically just replace Archer with Synergies and set up for a Giga skill nuke from Rin. Against MOC Starward mode, this team is able to perform a one cycle clear with E0 Rin, but it does need some pretty careful planning. This showcase is a proof of concept of what is possible, and I generally only recommend you guys try this at E1+ Rin. Here are the most important findings from my testing. Basic attacking and preserving skill points will be very common with this team at E0. So Synergies quite often uses her skill on Rin just to increase the charge count a little faster. This allows for slightly earlier skill copies, which pays off long term due to the cycle timing. Sparkle sometimes does need a basic just to wait for the right opportunity to boost and buff Rin. And then Huohuo will most of the time use her basic attack. Now, this team can be tricky to play at E0 since your skill nuke window has to be precisely timed. With E1, Rin has twice the amount of skill nukes available to her, which gives the team much better breathing room for big damage. When you do get this setup ready though, Rin can deal some crazy damage that is incredibly satisfying to pull off. With a bit stronger Rin on my team here, we could have zero cycled. Alright, so is it worth pulling for Rin? Well, I mean, you got her for the fake collab, right? I'm sure most of you guys watching are either planning to or already have her, but if you happen to be on the fence or just waiting for polls to pull for her, maybe those showcases swayed your interest. Now, the Rin Archer comp is really easy to play, and Sparkle and Huohuo have to be friendly, so this team is pretty solid lineup for endgame content. Those of you who do plan to go all the way to E6, you should have an insanely fun time with those extra turns and crazy skill nukes. I will be showcasing that E0 to E6 on my second channel, so be sure to check me out over there. If you are planning to pull for her, I wish you the best of luck. Let me know in the comments what you think of her. Don't forget to like and sub for complete character guides and summon videos. Have a good time with Fake Collab. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.